is a little bit grotesque. But of course, in the time of the dinosaurs, it was an age of kill or be killed. And now, I give you the Triceratops. Now, Triceratops was the largest of the ceratopsians, which was a whole group of dinosaurs with horns and frills on their heads. In fact, a fully grown bull could have been up to about 9 meters long, 4 meters high, and weighed 2 times more than an African elephant. But also, they had 3 horns on their heads with a large thrill made of solid bone. When the fossils were first discovered, they named these Triceratops horridus, which means horrid 3-horned face, but how could they? They are gorgeous. And of course it has a beak-shaped mouth because grass didn't evolve when the dinosaurs were around, and unlike a cow, the Triceratops didn't graze. It was a browser like a black rhino, so it would have fed on low shrubs and trees, which made it a herbivore, an animal that feeds on vegetable matter. And believe it or not, that beak-shaped mouth could actually snap off branches as thick around as my arm. And it has been shown that they might have lived in herds, but of course, for many years it was believed that Triceratops would have charged at either a rival Triceratops or a T-Rex, like a modern-day rhino. And a few years ago, scientists actually put that theory to the test, where they reconstructed a Triceratops skull with the same residue of their bones and charged it against what resembled T-Rex flesh. But in a flat-out charge, the Triceratops would have come off worse, with its whole upper jaw getting smashed to smithereens. So it's now been suggested that Triceratops may have stood its ground and used its horns to gouge and gore at its attackers, and one mistake by the T-Rex would have ended up with it getting stabbed in the belly, and like a sabre to the stomach, the mighty T-Rex would probably not be coming off good from that. And now I give you Ankylosaurus. Now, Ankylosaurus was another dinosaur that lived in North America during the late Cretaceous period, about the same time as T-Rex and Triceratops. And of course, it's known by paleontologists as a living tank because pretty much every part of its body was covered in armour. In fact, it's actually been shown that this armour was made of keratin, a lot like our fingernails. And this is probably the most fully constructed fossil of dinosaurs. It was discovered in Patagonia. And of course, as well as its armour, it also had this, a massive club at the end of its tail, and swung with enough force it could break the bones of a T-Rex. And of course, Ankylosaurus has also appeared in the Jurassic World movies, well, the first 2 that I know of, where it fought the Indominus Rex and lost, but also when it was sold at auction. Of course, I'm actually quite glad that the Ankylosaurus isn't around today, because if they could break the bones of a T-Rex with their club-like tail, they could probably smash the front door of my house to pieces as if it was a doll's house. So they are an animal I would not want to go up against. And the next is this, Stegosaurus. Now, Stegosaurus lived in North America about 150 million years ago in the Jurassic period, known by paleontologists as a heavily armoured tank. In fact, a fully grown bull could have been 9 metres long and been as heavy as a double-decker bus. But they also had this formidable weapon at the end of their tail called a thagomizer. And as I mentioned with the Allosaurus, they would have used this to fight an Allosaurus and even might have been able to puncture the bones of an Allosaurus or even Saurophaganax. And of course, they also had large plates along their backs, and paleontologists are not quite certain how they used those plates. I mean, they might have used them to flush blood into them to make them look bigger and more threatening. But it's also been shown in the last few decades that in the fossil records, Stegosaurus might have had a travelling companion. This dinosaur, Camptosaurus. Now, compared to Stegosaurus, Camptosaurus was a much smaller dinosaur, but skull analysis showed it had bigger eyes and, relative to its body, a much bigger brain. Because fossils of Stegosaurus and Camptosaurus are almost always found in the same area, and it's believed that these two dinosaurs stuck close together for mutual protection, where Camptosaurus acted as a lookout, while the armoured Stegosaurus provided the muscle. And of course, in a world stalked by Allosaurus and the larger Saurophaganax, you needed as much help as you could get. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you isn't actually a dinosaur. It is Sarcosuchus. Now, Sarcosuchus was the second biggest crocodile that ever lived. And it lived in North Africa around the same time as Spinosaurus, about 90 million years ago. And of course, it could grow to be about 10 metres in length and weigh about 4 tons. And it had one of the strongest jaws of any animal, theoretically strong enough to bite through steel. And its bite force was even more powerful than a T-Rex. And of course, unlike its larger cousin, the Dinosaurus that lived in North America, this animal, Sarcosuchus, had more of a narrow-shaped snout, a lot like a gharial, but it didn't just hunt large fish like Onchopristis. This animal also hunted dinosaurs, like this sauropod. So it would have hunted dinosaurs as big as sauropods. And of course, as you can see there, it even made the Nile crocodiles that are alive today move away. And it's also been shown that Sarcosuchus may have even made Spinosaurus wary. And of course, no one's entirely sure how this animal died out. I mean, it might have died out at the same time as Spinosaurus, when the sea levels rose and flooded their habitat, and they were depleted of their natural prey, and of course the loss of their habitat led to their extinction. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is another that's only recently been discovered. It is Predator X. Now, this is not a dinosaur. It's actually a marine reptile that was alive in the Jurassic period. And this animal was discovered in Svalbard in the Arctic Circle, where fragments of its skull were dug up from the frozen earth. When it was fully put together, its skull was a lot bigger than T-Rex, and fully constructed, this animal was about 15 metres long and probably weighed about 45 tons. It had many teeth in its mouth, some were hooked, some were serrated, and of course scientists just simply called this animal Predator X, which is an animal that must go down in history as one of the ocean's most deadly hunters. And of course, one way it hunted was because by studying their skulls, like with skull analysis, it has suggested that Predator X may have hunted its prey by smell. Like channeling water through special internal muscles, it was able to pick up the scent of prey. Of course, it mostly fed on other large submarine reptiles like Chimerosaurus, which were a member of a group called Plesiosaurs. And in fact, there's actually one skeleton of a Chimerosaurus that gives us a very chilling idea of how it was killed. It consists of a skull with a few vertebrae attached and nothing else. And of course, Predator X's bite is formidable, estimated to be about 4 times more powerful than T-Rex. Of course, what it would do is it would bite down hard, so its teeth would perforate the body, cutting through muscle and bone before shaking it to pieces. And of course, the bite marks on the the skull of the plesiosaur that I mentioned, that exactly match the teeth of Predator X. But also the position of the marks has suggested that the attack came from below. And of course, no one's entirely sure how this animal went extinct. I mean, it might have evolved into the Mosasaurus, that was alive in the Cretaceous, but I mean, no one's entirely sure, and I for one am glad this animal is not alive anymore, because it would make me not want to go in the sea. Now, I'm going to tell you all about the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. Now, the reign of the dinosaurs came to an end 65 million years ago at the end of the Cretaceous period. Now, this happened when their nemesis came from outer space. It was an asteroid that is now known as the Chicxulub impactor. And it slammed into Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Because the asteroid was 30 miles across and travelled faster than a speeding bullet, and it slammed into Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, which is all now known as the Gulf of Mexico, and you can still see the crater today. The impact of the force The impact had a force of power greater than the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. It also caused terrible natural disasters like hurricanes, earthquakes and tsunamis, but the worst to come was a large cloud of volcanic ash that covered the Earth in a blanket of darkness that lasted for months. Of course, 4 months after the impact, the devastation was catastrophic. And without sunlight, many plants died, so herbivores like the sauropods, the ankylosaurs, and the ceratopsians died of starvation. But predators like the giant pterosaur, Quetzalcoatlus, and even the giant T-Rex were affected. But for a while, as the herbivores died out, there was a supply of food so they could scavenge. But that was not something that would last forever, because once that was gone, the predators soon starved, and the dinosaurs' reign on Earth came to an end. But what many people don't know is that the mass extinction event didn't just cause the death of the dinosaurs. Approximately 75% of all life was wiped out. Birds at 95, mammals 90, insects 40, amphibians about 15, and dinosaurs 100%.